The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal, medical, or insurance advice. Every car accident involves unique circumstances and varying state laws across the United States. The content herein is designed to illustrate historical trends and potential outcomes based on generalized case studies. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence and consult with licensed professionals, such as attorneys, physicians, or insurance agents, regarding their specific situation and local jurisdictions. The moment of impact is not a bang. For those who have lived through it, the sound is more of a rhythmic metallic crunch followed by a silence so heavy it feels physical. In the United States, a car accident occurs approximately every 6 seconds. Statistically, the average American driver will be involved in at least 3 to 4 collisions over the course of their lifetime. Yet, despite the frequency of these events, nearly 90% of drivers are fundamentally unprepared for the 60 minutes that follow the deployment of an airbag. You are currently standing at a crossroads where your physical health, your financial stability, and your legal standing are all hovering in a state of extreme volatility. What you do in the next hour will determine whether you walk away with a restored life or a decade of mounting debt and chronic pain. This is not just about a damaged fender. It is about the intersection of American tort law, emergency medicine, and the complex machinery of the multi-billion-dollar insurance industry. If you think the danger ends when the cars stop moving, you are dangerously mistaken. The real wreck begins the moment you open your car door. In this deep dive masterclass, we are stripping away the myths and the panic to reveal the cold, hard mechanics of the American post-accident experience. We are going to explore why the human brain undergoes an amygdala hijack in the first 60 seconds, often leading victims to inadvertently admit fault or sign away their rights to compensation. We will examine the data behind emergency response times in urban versus rural environments, and how those minutes dictate long-term medical outcomes. We will break down the invisible chess match being played by insurance adjusters who may already be tracking your digital footprint before the tow truck even arrives. This video solves the most terrifying problem any driver faces: the paralyzing "what now?" when the smoke clears. By the end of this series, you will understand the systemic reality of the U.S. crash response system, giving you the clarity to navigate a high-stakes environment where every word you speak is potentially being recorded for a legal record. To understand the first hour, we must first understand the physics of the immediate aftermath. When two vehicles colliding at 35 miles per hour come to a halt, the energy transferred is equivalent to a fall from a 3-story building. Inside the cabin, the occupants have just experienced a massive spike in adrenaline and cortisol. This is a biological historical trend known as the fight-or-flight response, but in a car wreck, it often manifests as a deceptive mask for injury. We see case studies where individuals walk away from a totaled vehicle feeling fine, only to collapse hours later from internal hemorrhaging or discover permanent spinal misalignment weeks down the line. In the first 10 minutes of our hour, your body is essentially lying to you. The adrenaline is numbing your pain receptors, making you an unreliable witness to your own physical state. This biological phenomenon is why the first step in the American emergency protocol is often the most ignored: the assessment of shock. As you sit in the driver's seat, the atmosphere inside the vehicle is likely filled with the acrid smell of sodium azide, the chemical used to inflate airbags. This dust can irritate the lungs and eyes, contributing to a sense of disorientation. Outside, the American infrastructure begins its automated response. In many modern vehicles manufactured after 2020, an internal crash notification system has already alerted a private call center. These operators are trained to listen for signs of distress and use GPS coordinates to dispatch local authorities. This is the beginning of the official record. Every word spoken to an automated system or a 911 dispatcher is a piece of evidence. In the United States, the legal concept of excited utterances means that things you say immediately after a traumatic event can often be used in court, even if they would otherwise be considered hearsay. This is the first trap. A simple "I'm sorry, I didn't see you" spoken in a state of shock can be interpreted as a formal admission of liability, potentially shifting the entire financial burden of the accident onto your shoulders. By the 15-minute mark, the scene typically shifts from internal realization to external interaction. In suburban America, this is usually when the first blue and red lights appear in the rearview mirror. The arrival of law enforcement marks a pivot point. The police officer's primary goal is not to determine who is right in a moral sense, but to clear the roadway and file a standardized report. This report is the holy grail for insurance companies. We have analyzed historical trends showing that an inaccurately filed police report can lead to a multi-year legal battle. The officer will ask for your license, registration, and proof of insurance. In the chaos of the first hour, many drivers cannot find these documents, leading to further agitation and potential citations that complicate their legal standing. Furthermore, the first hour involves the complex interplay of no-fault versus at-fault state laws. If you are in a state like Florida or Michigan, the immediate medical billing process follows a different trajectory than in a state like Texas or California. Understanding which jurisdiction you are standing in is critical, because it dictates who pays for the ambulance that is likely currently idling nearby. The economic impact of this single hour is staggering. The average cost of an emergency room visit following a motor vehicle accident in the U.S. can range from $3,000 to over $20,000 depending on the diagnostic imaging required. If you refuse medical attention in this first hour because you feel okay, you are creating a gap in treatment. Insurance companies often use this gap to argue that your injuries were not caused by the accident, but by a subsequent event. Let us look at the data regarding the golden hour. In emergency medicine, the golden hour is the period of time following a traumatic injury, during which there is the highest likelihood that prompt medical and surgical treatment will prevent death. Even in a non-fatal wreck, the first 60 minutes are the golden hour for evidence preservation. While the police are marking the pavement and the paramedics are checking your vitals, the physical evidence is already beginning to disappear. Skid marks fade, weather conditions change, and witnesses drive away. In the hyper-litigious environment of the U.S., the absence of data is often filled by the narrative of the person who is best prepared. As we move deeper into this first hour, we must discuss the digital footprint. In 2026, the first thing many people do after a wreck is reach for their phone, not to call for help, but to post on social media or text family. This is a critical error. Metadata from your device can be used to establish if you were distracted at the time of impact. Even a checked-in status at a nearby coffee shop 3 minutes before the crash can be used to build a timeline against you. The first hour is a period of total exposure. You are being observed by the other driver, by bystanders with smartphones, and potentially by traffic cameras or Ring doorbells in residential neighborhoods. This masterclass is designed to move through the remaining 50 minutes of this hour with surgical precision. We will examine the specific questions a paramedic will ask you, and why your answers can affect your insurance claim. We will look at the mechanics of the tow truck industry, where bandit tows can hold your vehicle hostage for thousands of dollars if you don't know the regulations. We will break down the exchange of information and how to do it without compromising your privacy or your safety. The American road is a space of high utility but also high risk. By understanding the granular details of the first hour, you transform from a victim of circumstance into an informed participant in a very complex system. We are not just talking about surviving a crash, we are talking about surviving the American aftermath. Stick with us as we move into the second phase of this deep dive: the physics of the impact and the biological betrayal. To understand the biological betrayal, we must first look at the millisecond before the silence began. Imagine a commuter in 2026 named David. David is driving a modern electric SUV, a vehicle that weighs significantly more than its internal combustion predecessors due to the massive lithium-ion battery pack integrated into the chassis. As David approaches an intersection, a distracted driver runs a red light. The physics of this moment are governed by the formula for kinetic energy, where energy equals half of the mass times the velocity squared. Because David is in a 2026-era heavy EV, the force generated is immense. In the first collision, David's vehicle hits the other car. The crumple zones, engineered with high-strength alloys, begin to sacrifice themselves, folding in a calculated sequence to dissipate energy. But physics cannot be cheated. While the car stops, David's body does not. This leads to the second collision, David's body hitting the interior of the car. Even with a seatbelt, the sheer G-force causes his chest to strain against the polyester webbing with thousands of pounds of force. In less than 30 milliseconds, faster than the blink of a human eye, the car's onboard computer has triggered the pyrotechnic inflators for the airbags. Then comes the third and most dangerous collision, which occurs entirely inside David's body. This is the collision of internal organs against the skeletal structure. His heart moves forward, potentially bruising against the sternum. His brain, suspended in cerebrospinal fluid, slams against the front of his skull and then recoils to hit the back. This is known in medical case studies as a coup contre coup injury. David is not aware of any of this yet. As he sits in the settling dust of the cabin, a surge of epinephrine and norepinephrine, the body's natural adrenaline, floods his system. This is the beginning of the biological betrayal. The adrenaline serves a historical evolutionary purpose. It prepares the body to fight or flee by numbing pain and sharpening focus. For David, this means he feels an eerie sense of calm. He might even feel a strange buzz or a high. Historical trends show that many drivers in this exact moment report feeling completely fine, even uninjured. David unbuckles his seatbelt and steps out of the car. To a bystander, he looks like a survivor. In reality, the adrenaline is acting as a chemical mask, hiding catastrophic internal developments. Consider the case study of a 34-year-old professional in 2026 who, after a similar moderate impact collision, spent the first 20 minutes of the hour walking around the scene, taking photos and apologizing to the other driver. Because the adrenaline suppressed the pain of a grade 2 cervical strain and a minor concussion, she declined medical help. This is a potential outcome for David as well. When the body is in this heightened state, blood is diverted away from the digestive system and toward the muscles. This can lead to a delayed onset of symptoms. The fine David feels at minute 10 is a biological illusion that can lead to disastrous legal and medical decisions. As David stands on the asphalt, the primary injury he is likely ignoring is whiplash. In 2026, automotive headrests are more advanced than ever, designed to move forward to catch the head, but they cannot eliminate the rapid extension and flexion of the neck. The soft tissues, the ligaments, tendons, and muscles, are stretched beyond their physiological limits. This causes micro-tears that will eventually lead to inflammation. However, because these tissues have relatively low blood flow compared to muscles, the inflammation doesn't peak for 24 to 72 hours. In the first hour, David's neck feels stiff at worst, leading him to believe he has escaped injury. Furthermore, we must address the lucid interval. This is a terrifying phenomenon often seen in head trauma cases. A victim may appear completely normal and coherent immediately after the wreck, only to rapidly deteriorate as an intracranial bleed puts pressure on the brain. David might be standing there, checking his fenders, while a small vessel in his dura mater is slowly leaking. If he follows the common trend of refusing an EMT assessment because he feels energetic, he is bypassing the only window where early intervention could mitigate long-term neurological impact. The betrayal extends to the endocrine system. Along with adrenaline, David's body is pumping out cortisol, the primary stress hormone. High levels of cortisol can temporarily alter cognitive function. David might find himself unable to remember his own insurance policy number, or the name of the street he was just driving on. This is not just nerves, it is a physiological disruption of the hippocampus. This cognitive fog is why so many drivers in the first hour make inconsistent statements to the police. They aren't lying. Their brains are physically struggling to encode memories under the weight of a chemical storm. Let's look at the data regarding hidden shock. Medical professionals categorize shock as a state where the circulatory system fails to provide sufficient blood flow to the organs. In the first hour after a wreck, a driver may enter a state of compensated shock. The heart rate increases and peripheral blood vessels constrict to maintain blood pressure to the brain and heart. David might look pale or feel cold, but he will tell you he is just shaken up. If David were to look at a heart rate monitor in his 2026 smartwatch, he would see a resting heart rate of 130 beats per minute, a clear indicator of a body in crisis. Another layer of this hour is the visual compression effect. After a high-impact event, the human eye and brain often struggle with depth perception and peripheral awareness. David might look at the damage to his car and perceive it as minor, because his brain is struggling to process the complexity of the twisted metal. This leads to a historical trend where drivers significantly underestimate the cost of repairs and the severity of the impact, leading them to suggest settling this without insurance. This is a trap. In 2026, the sensors in a single bumper LiDAR, radar, and ultrasonic can cost upwards of $5,000 to recalibrate and replace. By underestimating the physics of the wreck, David is inadvertently setting himself up for a financial collision that will hit long after the adrenaline wears off. As the 20-minute mark approaches, the first siren begins to wail in the distance. David is still standing, still talking, and still convinced he is okay. He has no idea that his blood pressure is beginning to fluctuate and the micro-tears in his neck are starting to swell. He is about to meet the first responder, and the biological mask he is wearing is about to face its first professional test. But David is also about to encounter the witness trap. While David has been dealing with his internal chemistry, the other driver has been doing the same. In the United States, the interaction between two people in shock is a legal minefield. David is about to say something that could be interpreted as a legal admission of fault. He is about to hand over his driver's license with shaking hands, a sign of the cortisol crash that is just beginning. What happens when the police officer pulls out their notepad? What happens when a helpful bystander starts recording the interaction on their phone? David's biological betrayal is about to become a legal liability. We have analyzed the physics of the heavy EV impact and the chemical mask of the adrenaline surge. Now, we must look at what happens when the first official report is generated. The next 20 minutes of David's hour will dictate the next 20 months of his life. We are moving into the heart of the storm, the arrival of authority and the silence of the law. Now that David is standing on the side of the road, the fine feeling is starting to crack. He feels a slight throb in his temple. The officer is walking toward him, pen in hand, and the other driver is already pointing a finger in David's direction. If David speaks now, he is speaking for the record. We are about to enter the most legally sensitive window of the entire hour. The witness trap and the arrival of authority. The officer's boots crunch on the shattered glass of the intersection at exactly 22 minutes post-impact. For David, this is the moment the abstract chaos of the accident transforms into a documented legal reality. In the United States in 2026, law enforcement response is increasingly driven by high-resolution data. As the patrol car idles, its integrated dashcam and roof-mounted automated license plate readers have already scanned the scene, cataloging every vehicle within a 50-yard radius. David sees the officer step out, not with a clipboard, but with a ruggedized tablet linked to a precinct-wide artificial intelligence network. This is the arrival of authority, and it is the most critical window for David to maintain his composure despite the cortisol crash currently vibrating through his limbs. The first interaction is a historical trend in behavioral science, known as the authoritative assessment. The officer is not just checking for injuries. They are scanning for signs of impairment, aggression, or deception. Imagine if David, in his state of shock, rushes toward the officer and says, "I am so sorry, I just didn't see her coming." In David's mind, he is being a polite, responsible citizen. In the legal record, he has just made what is known as a statement against interest. In many jurisdictions, this excited utterance is a potential outcome that bypasses standard hearsay rules in court. The officer's body-worn camera is recording in 4K resolution, capturing the tremor in David's voice and the exact wording of that apology. Case studies from 2024 and 2025 have shown that these initial 30 seconds of dialogue often outweigh months of later depositions. Step 1 of the roadside investigation is the command for documentation. The officer will ask for David's license, registration, and proof of insurance. In 2026, most Americans carry these digitally. However, David's phone is currently buried under a deployed airbag or has slid into the footwell during the impact. The frantic search for a phone or a physical card can be misinterpreted by law enforcement as erratic behavior or an attempt to hide something. Historical trends in police reports suggest that drivers who cannot produce documentation within the first 3 minutes of the request are significantly more likely to receive secondary citations for non-moving violations, which complicate the insurance claim later. While David struggles to find his documents, the second player in the witness trap emerges. The other driver, let's call her Sarah. Sarah is also in shock, but she is already on her phone, potentially live-streaming the aftermath or recording David. In the first hour, the environment is a panopticon. Every bystander with a smartphone is a potential witness whose footage can be subpoenaed. There is a specific case study from a 2026 collision in Atlanta where a driver's insurance claim was denied because a bystander's video showed him walking without a limp immediately after the crash, contradicting his later claim of immediate, debilitating back pain. David must realize that his physical behavior in the first hour is being cataloged by more than just the police. The officer now begins the split narrative technique. They will interview David and Sarah separately to identify inconsistencies. This is where David's biological betrayal, the cognitive fog from part 2, becomes dangerous. The officer asks, "How fast were you going?" David, wanting to be helpful, guesses maybe 35. If the vehicle's event data recorder, or the black box, later shows he was going 38 in a 35 zone, that 3-mile-per-hour discrepancy can be used to impeach his entire testimony. Educational data suggests that the most accurate response in this moment is to stick to known facts rather than estimates. "I was traveling with the flow of traffic" is a factual statement, I was going 35 is a numerical estimate that invites a trap. By minute 35, the digital exchange of information occurs. In 2026, many states have moved to a tap-to-share system for insurance. David and Sarah might be asked to touch their phones together or scan a unique QR code generated by the officer's tablet. This isn't just for convenience. This system instantly links the accident report to the National Insurance Crime Bureau database. While this is happening, the officer is performing a visual reconstruction. They are looking at the skid marks or the lack thereof. In David's case, his 2026 Electron Volts has advanced regenerative braking and anti-lock systems that leave different tire marks than older internal combustion vehicles. The officer notes the point of impact and the final resting positions. Step by step, the officer is building a narrative of physics. If David tries to explain what he thinks happened, he is competing with the cold logic of the pavement. Historical trends show that the more a driver talks during this phase, the more likely they are to introduce a contradiction that an insurance adjuster will exploit 6 months down the line. The witness trap also involves the bystanders who have stopped to help. In the American legal system, an independent witness, someone with no stake in the outcome, is the gold standard of evidence. However, people's memories are notoriously faulty under stress. A bystander might tell the officer, "Yeah, the blue car was flying," when in reality, the silent motor of David's EV simply made it seem faster than it was. David cannot argue with witnesses at the scene. Any attempt to correct a witness in front of an officer is viewed as scene interference and can lead to a disorderly conduct charge or a negative notation in the police report. As the 40-minute mark approaches, the officer begins the final section of the initial report, the contributing factors section. This is a series of checkboxes on their tablet. Distraction, weather, road surface, failure to yield, speeding. These checkboxes are the primary data points used by insurance algorithms to assign a percentage of fault. In a comparative negligence state, if the officer checks failure to yield for David and speeding for Sarah, the financial responsibility might be split 60-40. This single tap on a screen in the first hour can represent a difference of tens of thousands of dollars in potential outcomes. David is now standing by the side of the road, the initial adrenaline surge beginning to wane. He feels cold, his hands are shaking more violently now, and the throb in his head has become a consistent pulse. He has survived the interaction with the police, but the most invasive part of the hour is just arriving. The distant wail of the siren he heard earlier has grown into a deafening roar. The ambulance has arrived. The paramedics are about to step out with a gurney and a series of questions that seem routine but are actually a medical legal diagnostic. David is about to face the treatment dilemma. If he refuses the ambulance, he saves a $3,000 transport fee, but potentially destroys his legal claim to medical recovery. If he goes, he enters a system where every scan and every vial of blood is a data point in his future settlement. But there is a third option he hasn't considered, one that involves the specific way American hospitals code auto accident injuries in 2026. The officer is handing David a case number on a small slip of thermal paper. This is his ticket to the next phase of the American aftermath. But as David reaches for it, he realizes his right arm isn't moving quite the way it was 10 minutes ago. The biological mask is slipping, and the true extent of the damage is about to be revealed under the fluorescent lights of an EMS rig. We are about to go inside the ambulance to see how the next 15 minutes will define David's physical and financial recovery in a world of algorithmic medicine. What happens when the paramedic asks David to rate his pain on a scale of 1 to 10, and David says 3, not knowing that a 3 in the first hour is often a 9 by the next morning? We are moving into the sterile, high-stakes environment of the emergency medical assessment. The paramedic, a seasoned professional named Marcus, approaches David at the 45-minute mark. Marcus isn't just looking for blood. He is looking for the subtle cues of traumatic brain injury and internal trauma that a civilian would never notice. In 2026, American paramedics are equipped with integrated biometric tablets that sync in real time with the local trauma center's cloud. As Marcus begins his assessment, the first thing he does is check David's pupillary response with a high-intensity pen light. This isn't just a routine. It is a search for anisocoria, or unequal pupil size, which serves as an immediate historical trend indicator of intracranial pressure. David is currently experiencing what is known in medical circles as the stoic rebound. Because he is embarrassed by the spectacle of the flashing lights and the gathered crowd, his brain is pushing him to minimize his discomfort. When Marcus asks the pivotal question on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst pain you have ever imagined, where are you right now? David says he is at a 3. This answer is a critical data point that will live in David's medical record forever. In the first hour, a 3 is often a biological lie. Case studies in 2026 show that over 70% of whiplash victims report a pain level under 4 at the scene, only to report a 9 or 10 within 24 hours once the inflammatory cytokines have fully saturated the damaged cervical ligaments. Marcus notes the 3 on his tablet but continues the physical exam, running his hands down David's spine to check for point tenderness. If David flinches even slightly, Marcus will immediately transition to a spinal immobilization protocol. In the United States, this involves the application of a cervical collar or C-collar. The C-collar is more than a medical device. It is a legal signal. For insurance adjusters looking at the file later, the presence of a C-collar in the first hour photograph suggests a high mechanism of injury, which fundamentally changes how they value the potential outcomes of the claim. While Marcus works, the financial machinery of the American healthcare system is already beginning to turn. The ambulance idling on the shoulder isn't just a vehicle. It is a mobile emergency room with a high operational cost. In 2026, the base rate for an advanced life support (ALS) transport in a major U.S. city often starts at $1,500, with additional charges for every mile traveled, every disposable supply used, and the administration of any intravenous fluids. David is standing at a financial crossroads. If he signs the Against Medical Advice (AMA) form, he might save the immediate cost of the ride, but he is performing a high-risk maneuver regarding his future recovery. Historical trends in personal injury litigation show that signing an AMA form is one of the most common reasons insurance companies give for denying a claim. Their logic is simple. If you weren't hurt enough to take the ambulance, you weren't hurt at all. This ignores the reality of the adrenaline mask we discussed earlier. Imagine if David signs that form, goes home, and wakes up the next morning unable to turn his head. When he finally goes to the ER 20 hours later, the insurance company will point to the AMA form as evidence that a secondary, non-accident-related event must have caused the injury. This is the treatment gap, and it is the primary weapon used to reduce settlements in the American legal system. If David agrees to the transport, the triage process moves into high gear. Marcus will likely start in 4-line, not because David is bleeding out, but as a precautionary measure to maintain a patent vein in case his blood pressure crashes during transport. The ambulance ride itself is the transition from the chaotic street to the controlled, sterile environment of the hospital. During these 15 minutes, Marcus is capturing David's vitals every 5 minutes. If David's blood pressure is trending downward while his heart rate is trending upward, it is a classic sign of compensated shock. Once they arrive at the hospital, David enters the world of the trauma activation fee. Many Americans are unaware that Level 1 and Level 2 trauma centers often charge a specific fee just for the assembly of the trauma team. In 2026, this fee can range from $5,000 to over $15,000, and it is triggered the moment the ambulance calls in a high-priority arrival. Even if David only stays for 2 hours and receives a clean bill of health, that activation fee remains. This is part of the deep-dive reality of the first hour. The moment you are loaded into that rig, you are entering a multi-billion-dollar economic ecosystem. Inside the ER, the medical coding process begins. Every diagnosis Marcus or the ER physician makes is assigned an ICD-11 code. These codes are not just for medical records. They are the language of insurance. If the doctor codes for a neck strain S13.4 versus a more specific disc herniation, it changes the trajectory of David's potential outcomes for months. In 2026, many hospitals use AI-assisted coding that analyzes the paramedic's notes to ensure all potential injuries are captured. If David continues to say he feels fine or just a little sore, the AI will likely suggest a lower severity code, which can be used by an insurance adjuster to argue that the impact was minor. Consider the case study of a driver in Phoenix who, in early 2026, insisted on being just a little shaken up during his entire first hour. He joked with the nurses and declined a CT scan. 6 months later, it was discovered he had a slow-leaking subdural hematoma that had caused permanent cognitive decline. Because his medical records from the first hour were filled with notes about him being alert, oriented, and joking, his legal team had an incredibly difficult time proving that the accident was the definitive cause of his neurological state. The first hour is the baseline. Anything you don't report now is something you didn't have later, as far as the system is concerned. As we reach the 55-minute mark of our hour, David is lying on a gurney in a hallway, waiting for imaging. The adrenaline is finally truly starting to dissipate. This is the crash. His body temperature is dropping, and he begins to shiver, a physical manifestation of the cortisol depletion. He is alone for the first time since the impact. His car is being hooked up to a winch, his phone is dying, and he is surrounded by the beep of monitors and the smell of antiseptic. The first hour is almost over, but the most dangerous trap isn't medical or legal. It's psychological. David is about to pick up his phone to call his insurance company. He thinks he's doing the right thing. He thinks he's being proactive. But he is about to speak to a professional whose job is to minimize the company's financial exposure. In the state of exhaustion David is in right now, he is a liability to his own future. What happens when the insurance adjuster asks for a recorded statement while David is still in the ER? What happens when they offer him a quick $500 check to settle the claim right then and there? We are about to enter the most high-stakes negotiation of David's life, and he doesn't even realize the game has started. We are moving from the sterile halls of the hospital to the aggressive mechanics of the insurance industry. The second hour is looming, but the final 5 minutes of the first hour are where the biggest financial mistakes are made. We are about to look at the phone call trap and why your own insurance agent might not be the ally you think they are. At exactly 56 minutes after the impact, David reaches into the plastic patient belongings bag provided by the hospital. His fingers tremble as he pulls out his smartphone. The screen is spiderwebbed with cracks from where it hit the dashboard, but the liquid crystal display still glows with a persistent cold light. David feels an overwhelming urge to do something productive. In the high-stress environment of the American aftermath, the human brain seeks control. He decides to call his insurance company. This is a historical trend in post-accident behavior. The belief that the insurance company is a protective entity, a safety net designed to catch him in his moment of crisis. In reality, David is about to enter the first notice of loss or FNOL phase, and he is doing so at his most cognitively vulnerable. When David dials the number on the back of his digital insurance card, he isn't just talking to a helpful representative. He is feeding data into a sophisticated, multi-layered risk assessment engine. In 2026, most major U.S. insurance carriers have replaced the initial human intake specialist with an AI-driven conversational interface. This AI is not just transcribing David's words, it is performing real-time sentiment analysis. It measures the latency in his speech, the tremor in his voice, and the specific syntax he uses. Historical trends in insurance data suggest that claimants who are in shock or under the influence of ER-administered pain medication are more likely to make admissions that can later be used to limit the company's liability. Imagine if the AI asks David, "Are you injured?" And David, still under the influence of that adrenaline mask and a fresh dose of hospital-grade anti-inflammatory, says, "I don't think so, I'm just a little sore." In David's mind, he is being honest about his current state. In the insurance database, this is recorded as a definitive statement of no injury. This 3-second interaction can create a massive hurdle for David if he later discovers he has a herniated disc that requires surgery. The system has already flagged his claim as a low-severity medical event. This is why case studies often show that the most successful potential outcomes occur when a driver waits until they have a full medical clearance before providing a detailed description of their physical condition. As the call progresses, the AI or the human adjuster will inevitably ask for a recorded statement. This is the centerpiece of the phone call trap. They will say it is for David's protection or to speed up the claim process. In the United States, you are generally required by your policy contract to cooperate with your own insurance company, but the timing of this cooperation is rarely specified as being within the first 60 minutes. By giving a recorded statement while lying on a gurney in the ER, David is locking himself into a narrative before the investigators have even seen the vehicles. If he says the other car came out of nowhere, an adjuster might interpret that as David failing to maintain a proper lookout. If he says he was going about 40, and the black box data later shows 42, his credibility is damaged before the first repair estimate is even written. Let us look at the data regarding the nuisance value settlement. In 2026, insurance companies use predictive modeling to identify claims that have the potential to become expensive. If the AI detects that David's accident involves a high-speed impact and a heavy EV, it knows the medical bills could eventually exceed 6 figures. To mitigate this, the adjuster might offer a quick settlement right there on the phone. They might say, "David, we'd like to send you a check for $500 for your trouble, plus we will cover your ER visit today." If David accepts this and signs a digital release, which can be done with a single tap in 2026, he may be signing away his right to any future compensation. Case studies from 2025 show a rising trend in these flash settlements, where victims realize weeks later that their $500 check barely covers a single physical therapy session. But by then, the legal release is ironclad. David also needs to understand the fundamental difference between his insurance agent and the insurance adjuster. David might have a great relationship with his local agent, the person who sold him the policy and knows his family. He might think, my agent will take care of me. But in the first hour, the agent has no power. The moment the claim is filed, the file is moved to a centralized claims department staffed by adjusters whose primary fiduciary duty is to the insurance company's shareholders. Their performance is often measured by their ability to close files quickly and minimize payouts. This is not personal. It is the mechanical reality of a for-profit industry that processes millions of recs a year. During this phone call, David is also at risk of the other driver's insurance trap. In 2026, insurance companies often share data through the ISO claim search system. If Sarah's insurance company sees the report pop up, they might try to call David directly while he is still in the hospital. They are even less obligated to look out for David's interests. They may use even more aggressive tactics, such as suggesting that Sarah's statement has already cleared her of fault, and that David should just settle with them now to avoid a lawsuit. In the first hour, David's ability to discern these tactics is at its lowest point. Beyond the phone call, there is the digital data trail. In 2026, your insurance company may have access to your vehicle's telematics data in real time if you have a usage-based insurance policy. While David is on the phone, the adjuster may already be looking at his braking pressure, his steering angle, and his speed at the moment of impact. If David's verbal account contradicts the telematics data, the discrepancy is automatically flagged as a potential fraud or liability indicator. This is why the first hour requires a level of precision that most people are simply incapable of providing while their body is reeling from a collision. As we reach the final minutes of the first hour, David hangs up the phone. He thinks he has checked a box and moved his life forward. In reality, he has likely left a trail of data points that will be scrutinized by defense attorneys and insurance adjusters for months to come. He is now being wheeled out of the ER bay toward the imaging department for a CT scan. The first hour is officially closing. He has survived the impact, the police interaction, the EMS assessment, and the initial insurance contact. But as the first hour ends, a new clock starts. The physical evidence at the scene is being cleared away. The tow truck has arrived and is currently dragging David's expensive EV onto a flatbed. This leads us to a part of the process that is often the most frustrating and expensive: the recovery and storage phase. What David doesn't know is that where his car goes next could cost him more than the ER visit itself. There are specific American laws regarding predatory towing and storage fees that vary by state, and David is about to find out that his car is being taken to a lot that charges $300 a day. The first hour has been about survival and documentation. The second hour is about the logistics of a broken life. We are about to look at the hidden economy of the tow yard, the reality of the total loss threshold in 2026, and the one thing David must do before that tow truck driver pulls away from the scene. If you think the stress is over because you're in the hospital, you haven't seen what happens when the tow yard refuses to let you get your laptop out of the back seat. What is the one document David forgot to ask the police officer for? And why will its absence haunt him when he tries to get his car back tomorrow? We are moving into the dark side of the American automotive recovery system. The document David failed to secure before the ambulance doors clicked shut is the driver information exchange form, often referred to in various states as the blue slip or the crash identification card. In the high-speed administrative world of 2026, this slip of paper, or its digital equivalent pushed to a secure app, is the master key to the next 48 hours of David's life. Without it, he is functionally invisible to the very systems designed to process his wreck. This document contains the police report number, the officer's badge number, and the specific dispatch code that identifies which private towing company was authorized to remove his vehicle from the public right-of-way. Back at the intersection, while David is being prepped for a CT scan, a flatbed tow truck from a company on the city's rotation list is winching his 2026 electric SUV out of the debris field. In the United States, the towing industry operates on a complex system of municipal contracts and private enterprise. If the police call the tow, it is a non-consensual tow, which means the rates are often regulated by local ordinances. However, historical trends show that in the chaos of the first hour, bandit towers, Operators who monitor police scanners and arrive before the official contractor frequently swoop in. They may convince a dazed driver or a distracted officer to let them take the car. If David's car ends up on a bandit's hook, he is entering a legal gray area where storage fees are not capped by the city, leading to potential outcomes where he is charged $500 just for the hookup and another $200 for every day the car sits behind a chain-link fence. For an EV like David's, the towing process in 2026 is a specialized technical operation. Because his vehicle uses a permanent magnet motor, it cannot be towed with the drive wheels on the ground. Doing so would turn the motor into a generator, sending electricity back into a potentially damaged high-voltage battery system, which could trigger a thermal runaway event, a battery fire that is nearly impossible to extinguish. The tow operator must use a flatbed or a set of high-speed dollies. Furthermore, in 2026, many municipal lots require EVs involved in significant impacts to be parked in a quarantine zone, at least 50 feet away from other vehicles or structures, to monitor for delayed battery ignition. This quarantine status often comes with a daily surcharge, adding another layer to the mounting economic weight of the first hour. Imagine if David had left his laptop, his house keys, or his medical records in the center console. In the United States, the Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches, but once a vehicle is impounded, the police often perform an inventory search to protect themselves against claims of lost or stolen property. Anything the police find can be documented. More importantly, once that car is behind the gate of a private tow yard, David's access to his own property is at the mercy of the yard's business hours and gate fees. Historical trends in the recovery industry show that yards may charge an administrative fee of $75 to $150 just to allow a driver to walk to their own car to retrieve a wallet. Let us look at the data regarding the total loss threshold in 2026. Vehicles today are essentially supercomputers on wheels. David's front bumper is not just plastic and foam. It is a housing unit for long-range LiDAR sensors, ultrasonic transducers, and high-definition cameras. A moderate front-end collision that would have been a simple $3,000 repair in 2010 is now a $25,000 electronic replacement job. Most American insurance companies use a threshold of 65 to 75% of the vehicle's fair market value to determine if a car is a total loss. Because EVs have high depreciation curves once the airbags deploy, the probability of David's car being totaled in the first 60 minutes is remarkably high. The tow yard knows this. They are already calculating the lien sale value, or the scrap weight of the lithium-ion cells, if the insurance company decides to abandon the vehicle to them. There is also the matter of the event data recorder retrieval. In the first hour, the physical car is a witness that cannot lie. However, that witness is about to be moved to a location where David no longer has control over who sees it. In many 2026 case studies, insurance investigators or even third-party data brokers attempt to access the car's digital logs at the tow yard. They are looking for the milliseconds of data before the impact. Was David's hands-on-wheel sensor active? Was he in a high-performance driving mode that might suggest aggressive behavior? By the time David is discharged from the hospital, the most important evidence in his case might have already been digitally harvested or physically altered by the movement of the vehicle. Consider the scenario where the tow truck driver asks David, while he was still at the scene, to sign a work order. In the stress of the moment, David might have thought he was just signing a receipt for the tow. In reality, many of these documents include a clause that grants the towing company a power of attorney to negotiate with the insurance company or authorizes repairs at a specific body shop owned by the towing company. This is a common historical trend used to bypass the driver's right to choose their own repair facility. It effectively hijacks the claim before an adjuster has even seen the damage. Step by step, the first hour has stripped David of his mobility, his physical health, and now his control over his second-largest asset. As he lies in the hospital bed, the bill for the tow is already at $480 and climbing. The storage clock is ticking. Every hour that passes is another $20 in storage fees, another $50 in quarantine fees, and another layer of bureaucratic distance between David and his property. The first hour is a symphony of moving parts. The police are filing the digital report, the paramedics are coding the injuries, the insurance AI is analyzing the speech patterns, and the tow yard is securing the collateral. David is the only one who doesn't have the full picture. He is the only one acting on emotion while everyone else is acting on an algorithm or a balance sheet. This is why the deep dive into these details is vital. Understanding the predatory nature of the recovery system allows a driver to intervene before the car is ever hooked up. But as the first hour concludes and David is finally wheeled into the CT scanner, a new threat emerges. It is not the tow yard or the insurance company. It is the digital echo of the crash. While David was distracted, someone at the scene was filming. That video is now being uploaded to a local community group. The comments are starting to roll in. People are speculating about who was at fault. The digital trial of David has begun before his physical trial has even been considered. We are moving into the second hour, where the immediate physical crisis transitions into a long-term digital and legal battle. What happens when the video of David's wreck goes viral in his local town? What happens when his employer sees the footage before David has even had the chance to call in sick? The first hour was about the body and the car. The second hour is about the reputation and the record. We are about to explore the viral liability trap and the specific way social media is being used by insurance defense teams in 2026 to dismantle injury claims. You need to know what to do the moment you see a phone pointed at you in the aftermath. As the motorized gurney slides David into the narrow, sterile bore of the CT scanner, a quiet hum fills the room. For David, this is a moment of forced stillness, but outside this lead-lined chamber, his digital identity is being dismantled at the speed of fiber optic light. We are now entering the viral liability phase of the first hour, a phenomenon that has reached peak efficiency in 2026. While David is holding his breath for a diagnostic image, a bystander named Tyler, who was standing at the corner of the intersection, has already uploaded a high-definition 4K video of the crash to a hyperlocal community app. This video is not just a piece of social media content. It is a raw, unedited, and potentially biased piece of evidence that is already being indexed by search engines and insurance algorithms. In the United States, the concept of the digital trial begins long before a courtroom is even considered. Tyler's video catches the immediate aftermath, the seconds where David, fueled by adrenaline, stumbled out of his EV and put his hands on his head. To a casual viewer, David looks relatively mobile. To an insurance defense team using AI-driven video analysis, those 3 seconds of footage are a goldmine. Historical trends in 2026 show that defense firms now employ specialized digital recon units that use automated scrapers to monitor for keywords like accident, wreck, or specific street names. Within 60 minutes of the impact, a digital file has likely been started on David, and Tyler's video is the first exhibit. Imagine if David's wife, receiving a frantic text from a witness who saw David's name on a work ID, posts to her social media circle, "David was in a bad wreck, but he is okay. Thank God he's walking." In her mind, she is providing relief to family members. In the cold, analytical environment of a claims adjustment office, the phrase "he is okay and he's walking" is a potential outcome used to mitigate the severity of David's soft tissue injuries. This is the social media echo. In 2026, the interconnectedness of our lives means that a car accident is no longer a private event between two drivers and the state. It is a public data point. Let us look at the mechanics of digital admissibility. In many U.S. jurisdictions, social media posts made in the immediate aftermath of an event can be considered contemporaneous notes. If David, while waiting for the ambulance, had posted a photo of his crumpled hood with the caption, "Can't believe I missed that light," he has just executed a digital confession. Even if he deletes it 10 minutes later, the metadata and the cached versions on third-party servers make it nearly impossible to fully erase. This is the spoliation of evidence trap. In the American legal system, if a party is found to have intentionally deleted digital evidence, a judge may issue an adverse inference instruction, telling a jury they can assume the deleted information was harmful to the person who deleted it. Beyond the legal ramifications, David is facing the professional liability window. In 2026, many corporate HR departments use real-time risk monitoring software. If David is a commercial driver, a delivery partner, or even a high-level executive, the viral video of his wreck might hit his employer's security desk before David has even been cleared by the ER doctor. Case studies from early 2026 have shown instances where employees were placed on administrative leave within the first hour of a wreck because a viral video appeared to show them using a handheld device seconds before an impact. The speed of information has outpaced the speed of due diligence. Furthermore, we must address the data harvesting of the 2026 vehicle itself. David's EV is essentially a rolling surveillance suite. It is equipped with multiple external cameras and an internal cabin camera designed to monitor driver alertness. In the first hour, that data is often automatically uploaded to the manufacturer's cloud as part of a safety event trigger. While David owns the car, the manufacturer's terms of service often grant them the right to use this data for research or to share it with law enforcement under a subpoena. In some states, insurance companies are pushing for legislative access to this real-time telematics data to determine fault within minutes of a claim being opened. This is the silent witness. David's own car may be testifying against him while he is still lying in the hospital. The first hour also sees the rise of the internet sleuth. When a wreck involves a high-profile vehicle like a 2026 Electron Volts or occurs in a busy metropolitan area, online communities often begin their own investigation. They analyze the video frame by frame, debating the timing of the yellow light or the speed of the vehicles. This creates a narrative bias. If the consensus on a popular forum is that David was at fault, that sentiment can bleed into the real world. Witnesses who later give statements to insurance adjusters may subconsciously align their memory with the popular online narrative they saw on their feed. This is a documented psychological phenomenon known as memory conformity, and it is a major factor in the high-stakes environment of American accident litigation. As David's CT scan concludes and he is rolled back into his ER bay, his phone buzzes with notifications. People he hasn't talked to in years are messaging him. The local news station has reached out via DM, asking for a statement. This is the point where many victims make a catastrophic error. They respond. They feel the need to defend themselves or tell their side of the story. In the state of post-concussive fog that often follows a high G impact, David's responses are likely to be inconsistent or overly emotional. Every character he types is a permanent part of the record. Step by step, the first hour has moved from the physical world of metal and bone to the digital world of bits and bytes. David is no longer just a patient, he is a profile. The insurance company's AI is currently comparing the bystander video with David's recorded phone statement from Part 5. They are looking for the slightest deviation. If David told the adjuster he was completely stopped, but the video shows him rolling at 2 miles per hour, the credibility gap begins to widen. This isn't about the 2 miles per hour. It's about the precedent of accuracy. But while the digital world is buzzing, the physical world is about to present David with its most frustrating reality. The hospital is preparing his discharge paperwork, or perhaps they are moving him to a specialized unit for observation. Either way, David is about to realize he has no way to get home. His car is in a quarantine lot, his phone is at 4% battery, and the realization of the financial cost is finally starting to pierce through the remaining painkillers. We are about to enter the logistics of the second hour. The rental car maze and the total loss reality. What happens when David finds out his insurance policy only covers $25 a day for a rental, but the only available vehicle in 2026 is a premium EV that costs $90? What happens when he realizes that his personal items, his laptop, his house keys, are locked in a tow yard that won't open until Monday morning? The first hour was about the crisis. The second hour is about the grind. We are moving into the mechanics of the insurance valuation and the brutal math of the American total loss system. David is about to learn that in 2026, your car might be worth more as a pile of scrap metal and recycled lithium than as a functioning vehicle, and the person telling him this is the same one who just offered him a $500 settlement. What is the one question David must ask his insurance adjuster before he leaves the hospital? And why will his answer to the nurse about his pain level determine the next 6 months of his life? We are stepping out of the scanner and into the reality of the aftermath. The nurse, leaning over David's gurney at the 60-minute mark, holds a digital tablet with a flickering cursor in the field labeled patient status at discharge. This is the moment where the medical narrative of the first hour is cemented into a permanent record. David, feeling the warm spread of an intravenous non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, tells the nurse he feels significantly better. He might even use the word great compared to how he felt on the pavement. This is a common historical trend in American emergency rooms. Patients, relieved to be out of the high-stress environment of the crash site and under the influence of professional care, often provide a glowing report of their immediate recovery. In the United States medical legal complex, this is known as the trap of the perceived recovery. The nurse's entry of stable and improved pain levels creates a data point that an insurance adjuster will later use to argue that any subsequent pain David experiences, such as the massive inflammatory response that typically peaks 36 hours after a whiplash event, is not related to the accident. Case studies from 2025 and 2026 show that insurance defense teams specifically look for this discharge note to challenge the necessity of long-term physical therapy. If David were to be more precise, stating that the medication is masking the underlying stiffness rather than indicating a full recovery, the medical record would more accurately reflect the potential outcomes of his injury. Step by step, the discharge process begins. David is handed a stack of digital documents to sign. In 2026, these are often presented as a single-tap consent form on a handheld device. One of these documents is likely a statement of financial responsibility. This document informs David that if his insurance company denies the claim or if the other driver is uninsured, David is personally liable for the full, non-negotiated hospital rate. In a Level 1 trauma center, 60 minutes of care, including the trauma activation fee, the CT scan, and the lab work, can easily exceed $15,000. Without a clear understanding of his own policy's personal injury protection or medical payments coverage, David is essentially signing a blank check while still in a state of post-traumatic fog. As David is wheeled toward the exit, he faces the rental car maze. In 2026, the American rental market has been transformed by the high cost of vehicle maintenance and the complexity of modern automotive sensors. David calls his insurance provider to activate his rental reimbursement coverage. He is then informed that his policy, which he hasn't updated in 5 years, has a daily limit of $30. In the current 2026 economy, a $30 a day rental is a relic of the past. The cheapest compact vehicle at a nearby agency starts at $65 a day, and if David wants a vehicle that matches the safety features of his total DV, the cost jumps to $90. This means David will be paying $60 out of pocket every single day for the next 3 weeks while his claim is investigated. Historical trends indicate that many drivers are forced to accept smaller, less safe vehicles because they cannot afford the daily gap in rental coverage, a factor that adds significant stress to the recovery period. Imagine if David's 2026 Electron Volts is sitting in that quarantine tow lot we discussed. The insurance adjuster is currently performing a total loss calculation. In the first hour after the wreck, the decision to total a vehicle is driven by the cost-to-repair ratio. For modern vehicles, this is no longer just about the frame. It is about the battery health. If David's EV suffered an impact that even slightly deformed the battery casing, most manufacturers in 2026 mandate a full battery replacement for safety reasons. A replacement battery for a high-range SUV can cost upwards of $25,000. When you add the cost of recalibrating the LiDAR and radar systems, the repair estimate quickly eclipses the 70% threshold of the car's actual cash value. Case studies in 2026 show that 68% of electric vehicles involved in front-end collisions are declared a total loss within the first 48 hours because of these astronomical sensor and battery costs. David is about to find out that he owes $45,000 on his car loan, but the insurance company is only offering him the actual cash value of $38,000. This $7,000 deficit is the gap. Unless David has specific gap insurance, he will be responsible for paying off a loan for a car that is currently being sold for scrap at a salvage auction. This financial realization often hits victims just as the physical pain starts to set in, creating a compounding crisis. Now David stands on the sidewalk of the hospital, waiting for a rideshare. This is the first time he has been alone and upright since the impact. He realizes he left his house keys in the center console of his car. He calls the tow yard. The operator tells him that because it is now after 6 p.m. on a Friday, the yard is closed until Monday morning. If David wants his keys now, he must pay a $200 after-hours gate fee. This is the predatory reality of the American recovery system. The tow yard has David's property, and they are legally allowed to hold it until their fees are settled. David is essentially locked out of his own life because of a 60-minute sequence of events he didn't initiate. Before David leaves the hospital area, there is one question he must ask his insurance adjuster that he likely hasn't considered. Is this a preferred body shop or a network facility? In the United States, insurance companies have contracts with specific shops. If David takes his car to a network shop, the insurance company might offer a limited lifetime repair warranty. However, historical trends show that these shops are often under pressure to use aftermarket or used parts to keep costs down for the insurance company. If David insists on using original equipment manufacturer, OEM, parts to ensure his sensors are calibrated to 2026 factory standards, he may face a battle with the adjuster over the difference in cost. Step by step, the first hour has dismantled David's physical health, his financial stability, and his peace of mind. As he sits in the back of the rideshare, watching the city lights blur past, he checks his phone one last time. He sees a notification from a legal service he never contacted. How did they get his number? Why are they calling him 61 minutes after his crash? This is the final and perhaps most intrusive layer of the American aftermath. The data-driven recruitment of accident victims. The first hour is over. David has survived the metal, the medics, and the initial bureaucracy. But the second hour is about to introduce him to a new kind of predator. He is about to learn how his private medical and police data was sold to a lead generation firm before he even left the CT scanner. We are moving into the world of the digital ambulance chasers and the battle for David's signature. What is the secret algorithm that legal firms use to target victims based on the severity of their crash? And why is David's phone about to become a battleground for a multi-million-dollar legal industry? We are entering the realm of the professional litigators and the true cost of a signature. David is sitting in the backseat of a rideshare at exactly 62 minutes post-impact. The artificial glow of his cracked smartphone screen illuminates his face, which is now noticeably pale as the hospital-grade anti-inflammatories begin their slow metabolic climb. Suddenly, his phone vibrates with a notification from an unknown number. Then another. Then a third. These are not from family or friends. They are targeted text messages from legal lead generation services. In 2026, the American legal market has become an algorithmic battlefield where the first hour after a wreck is the primary window for high-value client acquisition. David is experiencing the digital manifestation of the ambulance chaser, an industry that has evolved from physical proximity to real-time data exploitation. The speed of this outreach is not accidental. It is the result of a sophisticated data-scraping ecosystem. In many major U.S. metropolitan areas, police dispatch systems and emergency radio frequencies are no longer just audio. They are digital data streams. Specialized software in 2026 scrapes these public safety feeds for keywords such as MVA with injuries, airbag deployment, or heavy extrication required. When David's wreck was logged by the officer's tablet in Part 3, the location and the severity were potentially pushed to a subscriber-only database, used by law firms and marketing agencies. Within minutes, these firms use automated skip tracing tools to cross-reference David's license plate or the GPS coordinates of the crash with publicly available voter registration or credit header data. By the time David is leaving the hospital, his personal cell phone number has been identified as a high-intent lead. This is the professional litigator trap. Imagine if David, overwhelmed by the $7,000 gap in his car loan and the looming $15,000 ER bill, clicks on one of these links. He is immediately connected to an intake specialist, often an AI bot designed to mimic human empathy. The pitch is enticing. We handle everything so you can focus on healing. Case studies from early 2026 indicate that victims are most likely to sign a digital retainer agreement within the first 90 minutes of a traumatic event because their executive function is compromised by the cortisol crash. This is a potential outcome that has permanent financial consequences. In the United States, personal injury law is largely built on the contingency fee model. While the phrase "no fee unless we win" sounds like a safety net, the mechanics of the 2026 legal market are more complex. Historical trends show that the standard contingency fee is 33.3%, which often jumps to 40% if a lawsuit is formally filed. If David signs this agreement now, he is essentially selling a third of his future recovery before he even knows what that recovery is. Let us look at the math. If David's total settlement for his EV and his injuries is $100,000, the law firm will take $33,000 off the top. After the medical liens from the hospital are paid and the expert witness fees for the accident reconstruction are deducted, David might walk away with less than $20,000, hardly enough to cover the gap on his totaled car and his future physical therapy. Furthermore, David must understand the role of the letter of protection or LOP. In 2026, many law firms work with a network of medical providers who agree to treat the victim on a lien basis. This means David doesn't pay up front, but the medical provider charges a significantly higher rate than they would for a cash pay or standard insurance patient. This is a historical trend used to build the special damages of a case. While this ensures David gets treatment, it also means his settlement is being drained from both sides: the lawyer's percentage and the inflated medical liens. By the time the case settles 18 months later, the only parties who are truly made whole are the professional litigators and the lien-holding medical groups. As the rideshare turns onto David Street, his phone rings. This time it is a human caller, a legal investigator who claims to be working for a consumer advocacy group. This is a common tactic in the American legal ecosystem to bypass anti-solicitation laws. They aren't asking to represent him. They are offering a free case evaluation. This is the top of the funnel. If David provides them with the police report number he received in Part 6, he is handing them the keys to his claim. In 2026, these investigators often use aggressive psychological tactics, telling David that the insurance company is already building a file to deny his claim, which is true. But they use this fear to rush him into a contract. We must also consider the ethics of the first hour. In many states, there are barratry laws and ethical rules that prohibit attorneys from soliciting clients for a set period after an accident, often 30 days. However, lead generation companies that are not law firms are often exempt from these specific bar rules. They act as middlemen, capturing David's signature on a marketing agreement, and then selling that lead to the highest bidding law firm in the jurisdiction. David is not a client. He is a commodity being traded in a high-speed digital marketplace. Step by step, David is being surrounded. The insurance company wants a recorded statement to minimize fault. The hospital wants a financial responsibility signature to ensure payment. The tow yard wants storage fees. And now, the legal industry wants a third of his future. The first hour of a car wreck is the only time in a citizen's life where they are simultaneously targeted by four of the most powerful industries in the United States. Imagine if David had known to wait. Historical trends suggest that victims who wait just 48 hours to consult with multiple professionals, rather than signing with the first person to text them, achieve significantly better long-term potential outcomes. But the system is designed to prevent waiting. The system thrives on the urgency of the first 60 minutes. The insurance adjuster's $500 offer and the lawyer's 33% contract are both designed to capitalize on David's current state of physiological and emotional exhaustion. As David steps out of the rideshare and walks toward his front door, he realizes he still doesn't have his keys. He is standing on his own porch, locked out of his house, while the adrenaline has finally completely vanished. His neck is starting to feel like it is being gripped by a heated vice. This is the moment where the first hour ends and the true reality of the American aftermath begins. He is injured, he is in debt, he is digitally exposed, and he is physically stranded. But there is one final piece of the puzzle that David has completely overlooked. While he was in the hospital and while he was being targeted by lawyers, his car was doing something in the background. The 2026 telematics system in his EV has finished its automatic upload of the crash data to the manufacturer's central server. This data includes the cabin camera footage from the 3 seconds before the impact. What that camera saw, and what David has forgotten in his state of shock, is about to change everything. The first hour is over, but the evidence is just getting started. We are moving into the final part of our deep dive masterclass: the black box revelation and the long-term fallout. We are about to see the one piece of data that can override the police report, the witness statements, and the insurance AI. What did David's car see that he didn't? And why is the manufacturer about to send a notification that could either save his claim or lead to a total denial? The second hour is about to begin, and the stakes have never been higher. The hum of David's smartphone sitting on his kitchen counter at 65 minutes post-accident represents the final digital gavel of the first hour. While David is physically present in his home, mentally trying to reconstruct the fragments of the crash, his vehicle is finishing a sophisticated data handshake with a server farm 3 states away. In 2026, the modern American car is less of a mechanical tool and more of a forensic historian. This is the black box revelation, the moment where the subjective human experience is superseded by objective, high-frequency telemetry. David is about to receive an automated notification from his vehicle manufacturer's safety division, and the contents of this digital report will dictate the next 2 years of his life. In the United States, the Event Data Recorder or EDR has been standard for decades, but in 2026, these systems have evolved into comprehensive accident logging suites. Historical trends in automotive engineering have shifted from recording 5 seconds of data to capturing a full 30-second buffer of every internal and external sensor. As David opens the notification on his screen, he isn't just seeing a summary. He is looking at a high-resolution map of his own behavior. The log captures his steering input angle in degrees, his brake pedal pressure in pounds per square inch, and his motor's torque output at millisecond intervals. Imagine if the other driver, Sarah, claimed she was at a full stop when David hit her. David's car knows otherwise. The external LiDAR sensors, light detection and ranging, have created a three-dimensional point cloud of the intersection. This data shows the precise velocity of Sarah's vehicle relative to David's. In 2026, these point clouds are increasingly admissible in American civil courts as the gold standard of evidence. If Sarah was rolling at 4 miles per hour while her turn signal was inactive, the LiDAR data will prove it with a 99% confidence interval. This is a potential outcome where David's insurance premiums are saved not by his testimony, but by the silent, invisible lasers mounted in his front grille. However, the revelation goes deeper and becomes significantly more invasive. David's 2026 SUV is equipped with an interior cabin monitoring system. This system is designed for safety, using infrared sensors to track David's eye movements and head position to detect drowsiness or distraction. As the manufacturer's report compiles, it includes a data point called gaze tracking status. Historical trends in 2026 insurance defense show that adjusters now subpoena this specific metric almost as a matter of course. If the sensor indicates that David's eyes were diverted toward the center console for 1.8 seconds before the impact, he is facing a comparative negligence finding. Even if Sarah ran a red light, David's failure to maintain a proper lookout, documented by his own car, could result in him being assigned 30% of the fault. This is the biological technical intersection of the first hour. While David's brain was struggling with the adrenaline mask and the cortisol crash, his car was watching his pupils. The car recorded his heart rate through the steering wheel sensors and his respiration rate through the cabin cameras. In the United States, this biometric data is currently a legal frontier. Case studies from early 2026 suggest that if David's heart rate was already elevated before the crash, a defense attorney might argue he was in a state of road rage or high stress, potentially influencing his judgment and reaction time. David is no longer just a driver, he is a data set. Step by step, we must examine the chain of custody for this data. In the final minutes of the first hour, the car manufacturer typically holds the keys. Under the Driver Privacy Act of 2015 and its 2024 amendments, the data belongs to the vehicle owner, but there are significant exceptions for law enforcement and safety research. If the police officer from Part 3 suspected a criminal violation, they could have requested a search warrant for the EDR, while the car was still on the tow truck. In 2026, many manufacturers have streamlined this process, allowing for over-the-air data imaging by authorized authorities. David might not even know that his car's digital memory has already been copied and analyzed by a precinct-level AI before he even finished his CT scan. Furthermore, we must address the total loss math from the perspective of the manufacturer. In 2026, some EVs are equipped with what is known as a structural integrity seal. If the impact G-force exceeds a specific threshold, the car's software may permanently disable the high-voltage battery to prevent a future thermal event. This is a software-level total loss. Even if the car looks reparable, the manufacturer's refusal to recertify the battery pack makes the vehicle uninsurable and unfixable. David's notification might include a safety lockdown status, which essentially tells him that his $45,000 asset is now an expensive paperweight. The first hour concludes with a convergence of all the systems we have explored. David is sitting in his quiet house, but he is surrounded by the echoes of a multi-industry machinery. The hospital has coded his pain as a 3, creating a baseline that will be used to challenge his future symptoms. The insurance company has a recorded statement where David said he was fine, which they will contrast against the car's recorded 32G impact force. The tow yard is currently charging him by the hour for a quarantine spot he didn't choose. And the digital ambulance chasers are waiting for him to click a link that will cost him 40% of his future. This deep dive masterclass has shown that the 60 minutes following a car wreck in America are not merely a recovery period. They are a high-stakes administrative and legal competition. The person who wins this hour is the person who understands that every word is a record, every movement is a data point, and every silence is a strategic choice. David's experience is a cautionary historical trend for the modern American driver. In 2026, you do not just survive a crash. You navigate a system designed to categorize, quantify, and settle your life based on the milliseconds of the impact. As David sets his phone down, the first hour officially ends. The adrenaline is gone, replaced by a deep, aching fatigue and the cold reality of the financial and physical road ahead. He has navigated the immediate crisis, but the ripple effects are just beginning. The next hour, the second hour, is where the administrative grind begins, where he must find a way to get his keys from the tow yard, where he must decide whether to call a lawyer, and where he must deal with the first wave of true, unmasked physical pain. But there is one thing David has that many others do not. He has the police report number. He has a copy of his medical discharge. And he has the wisdom to wait before signing the insurance settlement. He is beginning to realize that the most important tool he has in 2026 isn't his car or his phone. It is his patience. The system moves at the speed of light, but the recovery moves at the speed of the human body. In our next deep dive, we will move into the second hour and beyond. We will examine the secret world of insurance adjuster software, the programs like Colossus and Guidewire that translate David's injuries into a dollar amount. We will look at how to get a vehicle out of a predatory tow lot without paying the gate fee. And we will reveal the one medical specialist every accident victim should see within the first 48 hours to ensure their injuries are properly documented before the insurance company closes the file. The first hour was about the wreck. The rest of your life is about the recovery. We are moving from the street to the courtroom, from the ambulance to the physical therapy clinic, and from the victim to the survivor. The second hour starts now. And the first phone call David makes will determine if he is heading toward a full restoration or a decade of mounting debt.